Serious? People who enter other people's homes as a part of your job, maintenance workers, etc. What's the weirdest thing you've seen inside someone's home? This lady had 7 huge birds, parrots, etc. all without cages and crapping directly onto the floor. It only had the pad that goes under carpet and everything had seeped through. It was horrible. She just got a German Shepherd puppy also and then proceeded to show me her machete collection. Had a dope but classic Airstream in the backyard though. My co-worker called animal control on her but we ended up closing her case shortly after, so not sure whatever happened. I used to install smoke alarms for the hearing impaired, 50% elderly and 50% deaf, all over the state of Oklahoma. I would get addresses for the installations the week before and plan routes accordingly, meaning I would just put the addresses into Google and check out the Earth map views. This place I'm thinking of was in the middle of nowhere, which is saying something considering that the entire state of Oklahoma is in the middle of nowhere. When my ASL interpreter and I made the trip, we had to ramp our minivan over a nearly washed out bridge, bounce down a forest road, and choose which of 3 broken down trailers these people were using as shelter. Looking back, we really should have just called it before ramping the bridge. Once there, we met the people and they explained, in ASL through my interpreter, that they had a tornado rip through their home that ended up sparking a fire somehow. That explanation never made it through translation. Since then they had decided to be more fire safety conscious, which I applaud, but their home had holes in the roof the size of people. One wall was just a tapestry of duct taped trash bags. I didn't feel right just installing fancy smoke alarms when they clearly needed much more help. But there wasn't anything I could do, so I'm doing the only thing I can do, installing smoke alarms, explaining basic fire safety, teaching them to use their bed shaking devices. These folks were deaf, and when I start to explain that they should exit the home without stopping to grab anything including pets, they stopped me and explained that their pet is very valuable, as in it had a monetary value. I'm not one to pry, so I took this at face value and reiterated the importance of leaving the home immediately if it is on fire, especially because it's a trailer home. They had a long, silent conversation with my interpreter during which he looked more and more concerned. The occupants go into a room I hadn't yet entered and emerge with a freaking bald eagle on a leash. Crap's illegal, yo. The occupants go into a room I hadn't yet entered and emerge with a freaking bald eagle on a leash. At that point I'd wonder if I had smoked some M and just forgot. So this isn't weird, but it was the most shocking. I was working with adults with intellectual disabilities that lived in residential homes. It was one of my first weeks in the job and a co-worker was taking me out to a home to show me what she did when she did home reviews. We get to the house, open the door, and we are instantly hit with a wall of air smelling like fesses. 2 steps in and it was apparent. There was diarrhea on a chair, on the carpet and random splotches all over. The whole house was in shambles. The fridge was full of moldy foods, and I'll never forget picking up the shredded cheese, shaking the bag, and seeing green mold flakes go up and down. Food was splattered all over the cabinets, the beds were stained with urine and fesses, and expired canned food was found everywhere. The staff, they had been neglecting those guys for a long time and no one had bothered to check up on them. I do construction sales, so I'm in homes a lot. For me, it's the sheer number of preppers that exist today. Walk into a suburban America basement and bam, 2 dozen buckets full of survival food, or ammo stuffed into every alcove and rafter. It's definitely not just the ones you expect. I do insulation and I've sprayed some impressive pepper spaces. My favorite was a 1200 SF house with a 2000 SF basement, concrete ceilings and walls. Part of the area was under his porches. It was a dang bunker. Dude even installed hydraulics on the vault door in case the house falls on it. I can still open the door. I worked as a delivery driver for a deliver anything company in the early 2000s. At the time it was a very novel, but ultimately unsustainable, idea for a business back then. We had a lot of regular weirdos. One night one of these weirdos ordered about $30 worth of candles from the dollar store. This job really brought to the forefront the disconnects that exist in us as consumers. So of course initially I had gotten the wrong kind of candles for the weirdo. He showed me what he wanted at his apartment door. Luckily the store was literally a couple blocks away, so I didn't have to waste much time because I wasn't being paid hourly. Come in was what I was greeted with when I returned, which is never something I'm particularly happy about as a delivery person. I see what my rational brain tells me is a pile of laundry on a coffee table in front of a filthy couch. But it's not that. It's a 3-foot tall wax pile. I had bought candles in jars the first time, and I could definitely see why those would not work for our gentleman. He needed freestanding candles so he could just plop one down and light it to continue building his wax mountain, which was starting to spill onto the floor. A less weird but more awkward experience I had with this man was him literally falling asleep mid-signature for his Burger King. Someone please help me budget, my family is starving. Food 100, bills 500, candles 3000 inches. I had a neighbor who offered me money to clean her apartment. She had mental health issues and got some kind of subsidy from the county for home assistance, which she didn't like, but she had an inspection coming up for continuing her other benefits. So, I walked in and there were dishes everywhere, glasses with dried stuff in the bottom, pizza boxes that smelled of old cheese in stacks, ashtrays piled so high they were pyramids of butts, beer cans and bottles scattered. Went into the kitchen and both sinks are piled up past the faucet. One side has water in it that's covered in a white film. The kitchen trash can had overflowed to the floor and has flies buzzing around it. Gross. But I needed the money, so I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. After I got the dishes under control, I moved on to the stove oven. When I opened the door, the inch bottom of the oven was crawling with maggots. The wave of smell was enough to about knock me on my butt and I ran out gagging. Went home, got a mask, went back and finished cleaning up. I still cannot figure out what she did to that oven. There was no food inside and looked like it had never been used. Yeah, you couldn't pay me to do that. Bless you. I don't know if I could really peg one thing as the weirdest, but collectively it sure as heck was. The entire main floor had drains in every room, because though it would be easier to hose their house down to clean it. The bathroom had a shower that you had to hold a button on the down for water to come out. There was no ensuite. Instead, the master bedroom had the tub and toilet right in it, with the toilet facing the bed. The tub was a massive jacuzzi but with a kitchen tap for a faucet so it couldn't fill up quickly enough to stay warm. Oh, and the house was filled with naked picture of the homeowner. There was no ensuite. Instead, the master bedroom had the tub and toilet right in it, with the toilet facing the bed. This is conceptually upsetting the way photos of carpeted bathrooms showers from the 70s are. On one occasion we were demolishing a kitchen for a remodel and found, sealed inside the wall, 5 empty beers and 1 full one. Yeah, you bloody builders can be messy bastards, haha. As a maintenance guy at a large apartment complex, I've seen some crap. Naked people, really gross people, but thank God no dead people. I remember doing an emergency water repair and had to go into an occupied unit. It was the strangest thing. It was pretty much empty. Dirty but empty. Like no one lives there. No furniture. Not even a bed. Just a crappy mattress on the floor. And some clothes scattered around. And at least 30 pairs of Nike shoes. All sorts of weird colors. Like this guy had no TV or couch but had a collection of expensive shoes. All the same size from what I could tell. IDK, it wasn't as bad as a few hoarder units we had. Yeah, this is a thing. I've known a few people who I'm sure live this way. Nothing to do so they're always out in town. No apparent income. No hobbies. But they look fresh as heck every time they go out. Doesn't seem like something I'd want to do. But I guess there are worse things to do with your time than dressing nice and having social interactions. I was on a ride along with the fire department. We responded to smell of smoke in an apartment building. We found the apartment fast enough because the fire alarm was going off inside. We walk in to find this guy naked as the day he was born, passed out on the floor in front of the TV with pee on way louder than it should be and the remnants of a pizza in the oven. In my last job I've known several people that get back from the bar and decide to cook in their extended stay kitchenettes only to pass out and set off the smoke alarm and have the hotel evacuated at 3 in the morning. I'm going with good old fashioned drunk. Checking fire alarms, testing emergency bedside buttons in a nursing home that are like individual little apartments. Opened the door to stench of death and sure enough lady dead on the bed, been there about 2 days. so I wasn't expecting so many responses, but to answer some questions, yes, the bedside button worked fine. No, nobody was in trouble for her not being found for 2 days. This specific place is very independent. They have their own cars and are free to come and go as they please, and the only time someone comes by is for any sort of maintenance or if they have visitors stop by. Worked as a furniture delivery guy for a rent-to-own place in Iowa for a couple of years, and I saw some absolutely crazy crap. We were delivering a couch to someone, and when we arrived there was no answer to our knocking. We called our manager back at the store and explained that no one was home. He tells us to hang out for a minute while he tries getting in touch with the customer. While we're waiting, we start hearing this weird sort of screeching sound coming from a detached garage. We decided to investigate the noise. We turned the corner to the front of the garage and came face to face with the meanest, scariest looking monkey I've ever seen. It was in the garage, but they had like this wire fence keeping it inside. The entire garage was its cage. In the middle of BFE, I have no idea what type of monkey it was. It was large and very angry. Cleaning a huge condo for a wealthy book publisher. The owner felt that cats were sacred, so they had suspended walkways through the entire 6k square featuring condo for the 2 cats to walk on, so they could move through every room without having to touch the floor. Additionally, every 12 feet or so in each room, they had a cat balcony the cats could sit on made out of real crystal. We weren't allowed to touch them as they were valued at $10,000 a piece. Used to work for a concrete company, and our mixer trucks would sometimes damage property. Typically my partner and I did maintenance on the plants, but we'd get sent to job sites to unfuck whatever the drivers did. So while at one house, we had to tear up the driveway, replace the culvert and repair the end of the driveway. The first day we were there, all the old snoopy neighbors were standing around watching us, and I had to pee pretty bad. So I asked the homeowner if I could use his bathroom. He said sure, and led me through his house, past a bathroom, into the bathroom in the master bedroom. Already creeped out by that. Oh, also I noticed cameras all over the place. Some pointed out windows, some pointed into the rooms. Creep factor leveled up. So he leads me to the bathroom, opens the door and holds it for me, like you would at a store. When someone is behind you, I say thanks. He still stands there. I had to walk past him and yank the door closed. While leaving, I notice a bedroom decked out in kids stuff. This would normally not toss up any flags. Grandkids room probably, right? But with all the added creepiness, it just didn't seem normal at all. Told my partner. He laughed and pointed out there was probably cameras in the bathroom. If either of us had to pee after that, we drove down to the gas station. So he leads me to the bathroom, opens the door and holds it for me. Man, I had reread that 3 times, haha. I was an estate agent, realtor, for rental properties, and I had a few wild moments. Top 2 were when I had been okayed by a member of a male couple to let myself in for a flat viewing one Saturday morning, but he must have forgotten to tell his boyfriend husband, because when I opened the door to the bedroom with my MF middle-aged couple, we found one of the tenants having a vigorous affair against the wall without a stitch on them and only 5 feet away. Still no idea how we didn't hear them before we opened the door. The other one was similar, but I was there to take photos, and the tenant, an elderly and overweight woman, forgot I was coming, so guess I found in the bath. Similar, I was tasked with entering every room in a small hotel to verify dimensions for an architectural project. One room, 2 men who looked like they're from the 80s, clearly doing some sort of business. Computers, printers, filing cabinets. But there was also some serious pee on the TV, like hardcore penetration, and it was just background noise. So weird. Really gets them in the working mood. Back in the early 90s, I worked for a company that removed old electric water heaters and replaced them with propane-powered water heaters. Because propane water heaters can possibly spew carbon monoxide, there are state regulations as to where the water heaters can and can't be placed, so it was my job to inspect the water heater room and draw up plans for ventilation, if necessary. I showed up at a client's home to inspect the area where he had his water heater to see if we needed to install any vents. When I asked to see his current water heater, he seemed a little uncomfortable and said, "I have something in the room that I forgot to clean up." I followed him to the room, and when he opened the door, the smell of weed hit me. In the water heater room, He had fishing lines strung up with trimmed plants being dried. If I were to guess, there must have been a couple pounds of weed drying in there. He said, "Oops, sorry about that." I smiled and told him, "No problem. I don't even know what that is." I knew exactly what it was, but I didn't want the guy to get worried about me telling someone. He offered me some, but I told him, "No thanks. I don't know what that is." As I was leaving, he asked me, "You aren't going to tell anyone about the plants, are you?" I asked, "What plants?" The guy smiled, then said, "You sure you don't want some?" I definitely wanted some, but I was still pretty new at my job, so I didn't want to take the chance that accepting weed from him would blow up in my face. Before I left, I told him, "Make sure you clear that closet before our guys arrive. They might not be happy about the plants I didn't see." Wasn't inside their home, but outside. I was on hurricane relief in the mountains of New York. We had to go and supply water to this guy whose house was deep in the woods. His property was surrounded by trees, and hanging from those trees were a bunch of black baby dolls from nooses. There was a wooden archway as you approached his house that said "Arbeit macht frei," which means work sets you free. That was on the entrance to Auschwitz. What on earth? Years ago I drove a tow truck at nights putting myself through college. Got a call to go get this woman's car. I pull up and she's in the car and won't get out. I ask her mom to please get out so I can safely tow your vehicle without you in it. She said that's never going to happen. I said it's an insurance violation for me to let you ride in your car. It's late, so I said screw it. Mom, please move to the passenger seat so I can put your car in neutral and steer it up on the flatbed. She complies. I get in the car and she says I can't leave them alone in here. I'm like, who? I turn around and there is no joke 30+ cats in the back of this old station wagon. Every single one of them in some sort of Halloween costume. The car smelled worse than anything I've ever encountered in my life. I used to work at a junk hauling company just out of high school. Think 1800 got junk from the Hoarder show. We got a call for a couch disposal and showed up at the house. Lady that answered the door was a little strange. We went inside to a gloomy apartment with no lights on and floor to ceiling rabbit cages. There must have been 20+ cages in her front room alone. All the floors were covered with sawdust and rabbits were everywhere. The whole place, as you would expect, smelled horrible and flies were everywhere. We walked to the back room, saw the couch just covered in rabbit crap and some lady sitting in a chair in the corner who never said a word to us. We stepped outside, called out boss and said we weren't going back in without hazmat suits and got the heck out of there. I was a firefighter for 15 years. One time the code enforcement department called us to assist with condemning a house. The smell was so strong from the street that they knew we needed air packs to enter. The owners were moved to the nursing home and left their dogs behind. Instead of doing anything about it, their daughter just kept throwing bags of dog food in the door periodically. There were 4 generations of inbred dogs in that house, ranging from still nursing puppies to 40-pound adults. I think the final count was in the low 20s when animal control got them all rounded up. There was a decomposing cat body. The feces was literally inches thick on the floor and splattered knee-high up the walls. You could see the fleas crawling on one guy's khaki pants when he came out. The daughter ended up getting well-deserved animal neglect charges out of it. I think the house got torn down. The weirdest part was the family portraits and knickknacks still on the walls and furniture like they had just left. A cop once told me he arrived at a warehouse fire to see a fireman hand off his hose and run back to the truck where the others beat him with shovels. Then he ran up to the hose and traded off with another guy who ran back to get beaten with shovels. Rats were fleeing the fire and crawling up them, getting entangled in the rubber of their coats. Some people's basement bars blow my mind. One 80-year-old had a bar in his basement that looked straight out of a 1958 Western cantina. I loved it. My father is a firefighter. They have regular calls to a man's apartment for disturbances, suspected medical distress, cries for help, the works. His name is ironically Norm, and he's a regular call for them. Norm is clearly mentally ill, but that doesn't change the fact that he has a freaking weird apartment. My dad says that Norm's apartment walls are covered floor to ceiling in egg cartons that are hot glued on. You cannot see an inch of wall in any room. Each night, he seals doors and windows in his unit with toothpaste, and my dad says that the dried toothpaste around the doors and windows is easily 4 inches thick. Norm says these are protective measures to keep evil spirits out. The last call my dad responded to was that Norm had lit his TV on fire and threw it out the window of his 5th floor unit. I suppose this was before his nightly toothpaste ritual. There was a cardboard box with a TV drawn on it sitting on the entertainment unit when they arrived. My dad also says that every time they've been there, there is a single beet boiling in a pot on the stove. I really don't know how this man is allowed to live on his own, or how he hasn't been evicted. Not exactly weird but cool. Knocked on the door and didn't get a response. The door was unlocked, so I let myself in to find a 90-year-old woman in her dressing gown head banging to Led Zeppelin. When I did pest control, I had a house I serviced where 3 strippers lived. They had poles all over the place and so much glitter everywhere, but they always hooked me up with some really good coffee that one of them got sent from back home. Aside from that, I found a body once. That probably wins for crap I wasn't expecting. I was an exterminator for 15 years and have seen some truly horrible things. Most people just need to clean up their homes. Some just needed to fill up gaps in doors and foundations. Did you find the body because of a report of an unpleasant smell? I've had to play find the stinky many times. Usually a dead mouse. Several picture frames clearly displayed. They all had different stock photos still in them. I had to work in a government housing block at Main and Hastings in Vancouver. I was cuting a hole in a ceiling while someone was laying on a dirty mattress right beside the ladder injecting H. The person was so fricked up that he didn't even notice all the drywall dust I was spilling on him. I think it's stranger that you were okay working next to a guy shooting up. I was a plumber going through college. While in training I went to an abandoned home that was being bought by a homeowner. They were trying to use their home warranty system. We entered the house to find that it had been used by squatters until a few weeks previous. The sink was literally overflowing with garbage and mold. The bathroom was also quite literally overflowing with crap. They didn't have any water but apparently kept taking dumps in the toilet, to the point where it was all over the floor around the toilet. The bathtub and the wall next to the bathtub was covered in mold and crap. Needles all over the place. We took one look at all of it and left. Other than that, I've seen all the stuff you'd normally expect. Hoarders, weed houses, hot moms who want their pipes fixed with a big wrench. But the squatter's house was the worst and weirdest. I do property management for multimillionaires, one of which has a plaque in her house from when she sold her shares in a company in excess of $50 million. It's not as strange as a lot of the comments here, but it always creeped me out. Her house is extremely nice, right on the beach, but it's a pretty old house. Inside everything is pretty old, from the furniture to the wallpaper. She has an abundance of creepy bus pictures dating back to the 1800s on her walls, on her tables. Even cup holders have creepy looking people on the bottom where you'd put your cup. I imagine it's all old pictures of her family, but it's really bizarre. She also has really old dolls that look creepy as crap. Some of them resembling Annabelle from the movie. She has probably 3-4 in every room in her 5,000 plus square featuring house. I hate going in there. I do property maintenance. One guy has been having problems with his heater recently. The breakers are in the closet on the wall. I've gone in a few times and noticed this huge stack covered by a big blue blanket. The other day I got curious and took a peek. It was a huge collection of Playboy magazines. It wasn't just one stack either, there were 2 stacks. I'm basically 6 tall. These came up to my chin. I've seen all types of crappy and nasty apartments, but this had me chuckling all day. I worked for Pizza Hut many years ago. I had to deliver to a house that was as normal as can be on the outside. I knocked on the door and a guy wearing only silk boxers answered. He was slightly overweight but looked like he was smuggling a freaking baseball bat in his boxers. He was casual as heck and asked me to step inside for a second as he had to get his wallet. I take one step inside and this extremely hot lady came around the corner. She was obviously not wearing a bra and her robe was barely closed. One of her steps flapped open her robe enough to know that she shaved her down below. I looked behind her and you could see a video camera set up on a tripod, so it was obvious what they were doing. The guy hands me the money with a good sized tip, no pun intended, and tells me that he appreciated me bringing the food. I said no problem, have fun doing what you're doing, and if you need a cameraman, let me know. I don't even remember thinking the last part until it was coming out of my mouth. He just kind of laughed and said maybe next time, my dude. The girl just laughed a little and I left. Dang, the bad luck. Honestly, I don't know what I would have done if they said, yeah, let's do this. I do appliance repair. I walked into this mansion in West Austin and in the kitchen was 20 Persian cats. They lived in there and were not allowed to leave. Cat beds everywhere. Granted this was a huge kitchen but 8 cat beds on the island. Cat beds on every surface possible and the smell. I was covered in hives in 10 minutes. I was asked to help a guy pack for a move. Showed up to talk to him about the job and saw his living room floor had an 8x8 grid of copy paper boxes, all half packed. He said no one could possibly help him pack because he had a special method. This light bulb, you see, and this cassette tape were both from his apartment in Chicago 1978. So they went in this particular box with all the other 1978 things. He was correct, no one could help him pack. I had to walk out mid-sentence. He clearly had not been taking his meds. I've seen some rather impressive layering of garbage, animal feces, roach debris, and the like, but that isn't weird anymore. I saw a living room with 2 kiddie pools in it to catch leaks from rain. The pools weren't bailed, but rather, just left to evaporate. You can imagine the mold. Another room in this house. The ceiling had fallen in. The door to this room was duct taped shut and a cabinet moved in front of the door. Sadly, this was my parents' house before it was, thankfully, demolished. I used to be a house painter. One weekend was working with my female partner at a house for a woman and her toddler daughter. The daughter was chatty and cute, mostly sat on the couch watching TV but would talk to us while we worked. I was on my knees painting some trim with my back to the daughter when she said look at me. I turned around and saw her on the couch wrapped in a blanket. She opened the blanket and said I'm naked. I immediately turned back around and said loudly I don't need to see that. From the other room, her mom yelled out is she taking her clothes off again? At the end of the day, we were laughing about it with the mother and I said she is going to be really popular when she gets older. Luckily, she took it well. My youngest sister used to stand in a huge window naked. Luckily it was the late 80s early 90s in a German village and the window didn't face the street directly. She is 32 now and a fake she doesn't do that anymore. Former ad tech. Young Asian man in his underwear in a dog cage in the house of a man in his 60s or 70s. That's either a really unsettling fetish, or you saw some grade A human trafficking. Used to work for my dad when I was a teenager. Plumbing, electrical work, jack of all trades things. We'd go to this elderly woman's house to replace her dining room floor. The entire time we're in there, we're being watched by what I can only describe as a taxidermist's attempt at being Frankenstein. It was a raccoon head, cat body, dog legs, ferret paws and skunk-tailed thing. She was very proud of it. I'm a carpenter. I have 2 that stand out. 1. Client is a judge. She's 40, unbelievably beautiful, but dresses and acts like a judge. In her bedroom, she has a 8-foot tall full-length photograph of herself Mardi Gras nude. So, beads, a crown, a face veil, spinny propellers on her tee, a feather boa sort of covering her navel, fishnet and silver platform shoes. She's really a great client. 2. Client has a 4-story house. Think Edward Gorey. She has filled it, stuffed, top to bottom with antique furniture. You cannot move in there. Her house is so full of furniture, but she wants more. So on top of every surface is a dollhouse, filled with tiny replicas of antique furniture. She also has a teenage son who is addicted to H. He has a trapdoor that goes to the attic. He lives up there. It has a sleeping bag, and is lit with a lava lamp. She is an awful client and gets mad at me when I have to move her things to work. Repossession as part of a finance company. I do sales, but part of that is delivery, and unfortunately repossession. I have seen some disgusting houses, but the weirdest and worst has to be this couple with a young child who were just piling used nappies in the corner of their house. Not like a 5 or 6 but like mountain of used diapers. Just in one corner like it was the allocated diaper corner. The smell was unbearable. Nearly threw up walking through the door. We left the goods at the house as it was a health risk. The rest of the house was just as disgusting, like used dishes, ashtrays, fast food rubbish etc. They honestly looked unfazed by it. To this day I have no idea how they haven't died of some disease or something. The poor kid. This cat is shocked that you haven't liked this video yet. Like it fast so they can calm down. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.